We're excited to talk about the Bible and want to be faithful to examine as much of the text as possible. Unfortunately, we can't cover everything in a Sunday sermon, and lots of study and material get left on the cutting room floor. These episodes are our attempt to continue the conversation and cover as much of the Bible as we can. So welcome to the cutting room floor.
Welcome to the cutting room floor. Glad you guys have joined again with us this week. Devin, we've been through the strikes or plagues, as we've called them, and so we're going to kind of go back and look at some former passages as well, and maybe examine some of the plagues. I'm looking forward to this week's episode.
Sounds good.
Let's rock and roll.
Okay. I think the thing that I've been pondering a lot over the last week or two, just as we're heading into Exodus, is we've said over and over again when we were going through Genesis that, like, as the story continues, it's going to get harder, I guess, but we need to call it to the front of our minds, these covenant promises, looking for the snake crusher, all that stuff. So I kind of want to know, can you kind of like summarize when it comes to covenants, what have we covered so far?
Yeah.
And what are we looking for as now this people is moving out of, well, will be moving into
the promised land, out of exile.
Well, wilderness first.
Oh, good point.
So, which I want to get to before we jump there, but and we're going to get a more concrete, a more distilled down, is kind of the way we've been talking about it, view of God's covenant relationship with his people. So before we get there, I'd like to kind of go back and relook at some of those other covenants we've hit so far.
Well, so there's debate amongst scholarship about, is there a covenant at creation? It depends on who you read, because there's no express words covenant at creation. However,
it feels like a covenantal relationship.
It definitely does. And the way that God interacts with the man and the woman, not called Adam and Eve until the fall, but Adam and Eve, the way that God interacts with them, it sounds really similar to the way he's interacting with Noah, and again with Abraham, and again even with Moses and the nation at that point. So those express moments of covenant where we have either the cutting of a covenant or the creation of a covenant. There's kind of two different words that get used there.
Yeah.
There's Hakim Barat, and there is Karat. Barik or Baruch or something like that.
And we don't get either of those with the Adam and Eve.
No.
Because I have kind of heard just around that, someone could almost, I don't know if extrapolate into it is the word, but that like, post the fall, like God gives them a covering of animal skins, and people kind of want to stretch that into, I don't know if that's a stretch or not.
Right.
But if that kind of fits that imagery there. But to me, the thing that makes it feel more like a covenant is the expectations within a relationship or a partnership. Is the important thing.
And that's exactly, if you're asking the person that agrees that there is a covenant implied, how about that, in the creation story, then that's where they would come from, is that the language of partnership, the language of relationship from a greater being to a lesser being,
right? But without the ceremonial demonstrations that go with it, I guess,
because that's what we see with Noah, that's what we see with Abraham, that's what we see with Moses. But I'm of the opinion, and I could be swayed, and also if someone disagrees with me, that's okay. It doesn't essentially change the narrative,
right?
Whether or not there is a covenant there at creation. However, I do agree with those who would state that there is a covenant implied,
right,
at creation. So we've got the creation covenant then, if that is there, and that's about partnership and relationship and communication directly man to God. Then we get into the Noah covenant. So scholars say Noahic, so it's Noahic, so Noahic covenant, and that's where we actually see some kind of ceremony, as it were. Noah offers a sacrifice, and God makes promises. And then we have the rainbow as a sign of that covenant. Okay. You could argue that the sign of the covenant in creation would be man and woman being faithful to God, and then living out the being fruitful and multiplying and ruling and subduing the earth. So that would be maybe the way that they would walk with God.
So you're talking about covenant for Adam and Eve again.
Yes.
Pre fall of humanity.
Correct.
Would be,
Correct.
hey, here are the terms of a all positive relationship. I guess maybe I was thinking about it in it does seem like there's some similarity between like, hey, this is what I will do and this is what you will do.
Yeah.
Kind of I guess terms and agreements type of thing, and that God will be faithful to his end even when we aren't. Kind of starts from the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
Yeah. So I kind of see that if we're looking backwards and saying, is this a covenant moment? I can see where it is an echoing.
It shares that language.
Yeah.
It shares that language. Even if the word isn't expressly stated, it shares that language. So then, now, as far as the sacrifice, though, because you did mention that, and I forgot to mention that when I was explaining there, but as far as the moment of, well, sacrifice may not be the right word, again, because it's not the specific word used.
Right.
But there is some kind of implication contained in there where the animal skins are used as a covering, which, we really get express statements about that later on in really the Mosaic covenant, or the lead up to the Mosaic covenant through Passover. But yeah, that kind of relational communication stipulations, or how about we say it this way? Let's not use those big words. Let's use these words. The way we relate to one another.
Right.
The way I relate to someone, whether it's unspoken or it's spoken, there's kind of a rule set about which, because you can't just do anything to show someone honor and love and faithfulness.
Right.
There are particular things that God demands of us in order to stay in right relationship with him. And that's contingent upon his grace, of course, the fact that he even reveals himself to us at all, or even creates in the first place. But it doesn't change the fact that from grace, from our response of grace, which would be faith, then what flows from that is our works.
Yeah.
Our ability to follow these commands that God has given us. So that would be creation. Then we have. Did you want to say anything else there?
No, I'm just trying to form this in my head, kind of thinking about. We've mentioned it a couple times before that there's a lot of things that are happening pre getting the law from Moses that will say, this is how and why you do these things. But we have early on, we have sacrifices brought by Cain and Abel, and like, why are they compelled to do that? And you can look at old episodes. We talked all about that. But, clean and unclean is mentioned before we're given a list of what those things are.
Yep.
So there's kind of two things to that that are kind of kicking around in my head right now that, I think that there is they're living within a culture and there's an understanding of clean and unclean. And also, I don't think God is completely silent in his relationship. Obviously, he's meeting and, so I think things are built, but then also thinking about, when we talk about a covering for Adam and Eve, and how we say, well, that kind of echoes what we see later with sacrifice. I almost wonder if it's if what we do in sacrifice, what they do later on in sacrifice is meant to point back to that in some way. Yeah. And it becomes, again, a more distilled down picture of this is the human condition, this is the human state, and here's what needs to happen for a right relationship with God. Even if it's not directly, hey, this is why God did this, when we're at that point in the story. But as we move forward, if that's what's in the mind of the people who are carrying out the sacrifice.
I certainly think so.
Okay.
Which again is why I would agree with those who would stipulate that, or would guess at or think that there is an inference towards the idea of a creation covenant. Because
that it is
of those
heading towards that from the beginning.
And those details that are in there are not in there by accident.
Right.
We don't have to say that God gives them a covering. And we don't have to use those particular words.
Right, but if we do, they're like, well, they need a covering.
Correct.
And it's like, well, this works in one sense, but what do they need ultimately?
Correct.
And how does that happen? So I'm tracking with you.
So I definitely think that, the implication is there. And I've been reading this book that, that I've been telling you about. You have this book. In fact, it's a big monster of a book.
Fat.
There is a distilled version of this book.
I tried. I don't remember where I made it. I'll try again someday. But
and I'm trudging through. I'm barely hanging on. So anyway, it's a scholarly work but it's still, graspable enough. So if someone wanted to buy it, it definitely would be worth their while. It's called Kingdom Through Covenant by Gentry and Wellum. And they do a lot more of the literary, scholarly, the criticism work. I don't mean criticism as in like, that's bad. I just mean the scholarly endeavor of criticism. And also they do the word, like the actual Hebrew words work, the grammar and those kinds of things. And so if you're curious more about, why I would arrive at that conclusion, they backfill all that information. But yeah, I definitely think I'm convinced that there is a creation covenant. And the point of this book that I just mentioned, Kingdom Through Covenant, is again, if we believe, like we say around here a lot, that the point of the Bible is about a king and his kingdom, and that all of the elements of the Bible fit into that main story, then how is it that we have arranged maybe shorthand our 9 chapters that we've broken up into sermons? Like, how is it that we're actually arranging like the biblical story? Well, it's around this idea of covenants. Like the major moments, and not to say that any part of the Bible isn't important, that's not what I mean, but there are distinct moments that are maybe more important than another detail that would lead into, I think you've used the example of like background stuff, like in a play.
Yeah.
Those things are important. They add to what's going on.
Yeah.
And there are important details within there. And like if you have no set design and no good music,
you can tell a story based on the dialogue and the interaction between people, but to set the stage,
it really enriches the experience, and it might even help make the point you're trying to make. I've seen silly videos about like if you put like a sappy love song in the midst of a I don't know, an action movie, it changes the vibe of the moment. So it does matter. So I'm not saying that elements of the biblical text don't matter. What I'm saying is that some elements in the biblical text, specifically the covenants, they have this standout role. They have this chapter turning moment kind of role.
Which, I guess, question off of that, I don't know if you have it handy or if you have it memorized, but our chapter kind of breakdown for what we're doing, that we're going so slow through.
Yeah.
But I guess like if we are saying that like, largely this is built around the idea of covenant, it doesn't seem to me when I look at the list like it is covenant moments only. We kind of, I mean, we have it here: creation, Abraham, Exodus, kingdom of Israel, exile, return and silence, Jesus, the church, new creation.
That's right.
I mean, right off the bat, we've taken creation and the Noahic covenant.
Yeah, it kind of smushed them together.
Yeah. Correct. And so I guess why, I've never asked you why. Why did you break it up into these categories?
Because there is a sense in which the covenants, and I think we talked about this last time, in fact, the idea of stacking concepts. I like that as a metaphor or an analogy to what's going on in the biblical story. But I think what also is going on is that they're deepening, in a sense. They're distilling down. So they are stacking, but they're also digging down at the same time. I don't know how to describe that. Maybe it's kind of like those pencils, where you would pull one piece out and you could put it, and then the next pencil lead would pop out. You know what I'm trying to talk about?
Yeah.
Not a mechanical pencil, but
you pull the tip, push
yes,
it in the back.
and that pushes out another new tip. So I think it's something like that. It's where they're doing both of those things at the same time. So in other words, the creation covenant leads into the Noahic covenant, and the Noahic covenant is like a renewal of that first covenant. However, it has because God's responding to the reality of humanity around. There's not much humanity after Noah, but you get it. He's responding to the reality of the new situation as it is. It's not like it was in Eden. So now that we're in exile, this is now how this initial covenant now plays out, and we're starting a new thing, but it's a thing that cooperates or holds hands with the thing before it.
Okay, so before we keep moving down the covenantal chain, I guess, I've always kind of thought of it as like, well, now here are God's more specific conditions for the covenant relationship. But it's also a moment where God kind of declares himself again.
Yes.
Like identity moments, which we've talked about before. I know we've talked about that. But also like, I did what I said I was going to do. Right. It's always a moment of I've held up my end and now you
have
will
a
do
part to
this.
play.
Yeah. And then usually shortly after
They
we
mess up.
fail. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I kind of want that more at the forefront of my mind when we're looking at, this is another covenant moment as this is God fulfilling his end of the covenant,
Yeah.
So, sorry, continue.
No, and that's a really important point to bring out, because, again, when we turn these pages, sometimes 400 years have passed.
Right. And that it's not just like new laws, new laws, new laws, new laws. It is God meeting with his people.
Yes.
To restore this right relationship and get us closer and closer to right relationship.
Right relationship. So, and how will that happen? We know through the snake crusher, at least at the beginning of the story. And so, and I think I've made the statement, something to the tune of, I don't have the exact words in front of me, but something to the tune of whatever's going on with the snake crusher promise has to coincide with whatever's going on with these covenantal promises in order for God to stay logically coherent, which of course he will, because he is perfect logic and sets those rules. And so they have to coordinate, and all these other like prophetic utterances, like we talked about with, even Jacob's blessing over Judah.
Yeah.
For instance,
Yeah.
they all of those things have to connect, and they have to cohere with one another. Again, they have to hold hands with the thing that came before, as well as maybe the thing that's coming after, even if we don't know what that after is yet in the story, because that other hand is reaching towards something.
Yeah.
And so I've compressed, to your question, the creation covenant and the Noahic covenant, because there's a sense in which the Noahic covenant is a renewal of.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's
It's almost like another shot at Eden, but the conditions are different because the world is still fallen.
That's
Humanity's already fallen,
Right,
but
exile.
we're back at a reset almost.
Correct.
So,
and that's how Noah is pictured. He's pictured as a new Adam who plants a garden. I mean, all this language that we've kind of talked through. So these covenants stack, but they're also deepening at the same time. And so we have the covenant with the covenant sign now, which would be the rainbow. And then we kind of move forward past the Noah story. And again, we don't know how much time has passed as we're turning those pages.
Right.
But we know some time has passed such that nations can gather and do this thing. Right? They can build the Tower of Babel, or a nation can gather lots of people. And so then after Tower of Babel situation, we immediately shift the story to Abraham. And then Genesis chapters 12, 15, and 17 kind of all are, again, holding hands together to show us another covenant that God is making. And now the covenant that has gone towards humanity, because again, that's how that's how we started in the beginning. Adam means humanity.
yeah.
And so we have a covenant with humanity at the beginning. Then we have a covenant with new humanity, Noah. Okay. Then we have now a covenant with a specific family because new humanity is still in rebellion.
Which has been an interesting thing to like reframe what's the reference point, what's the conditions of the story, and kind of for me over the last couple of years, keep finding myself pulling back to Genesis chapter 3, over and over and over again. And Genesis 15, the kind of the beginning of the Abrahamic covenant, has kind of become another one of these like, I don't know how there's a real flag planted in that one, and I can't.
Linchpin, however you say it.
It is the conditions for what we're running up to. So it's just interesting once you, I don't know, when you're looking at the Bible and you get these real concrete points where you're like, all right, if this is the context, this is the context, this is what we're looking for. And Genesis 15 has been one of those.
Oh, and it's
now that we're talking Abrahamic covenant.
And it's a huge one because now we've gone from humanity to a specific individual who, through that individual and his family, which will become a nation, which even God says in Genesis 12 and again in 15, it's still constrained. So the covenant now is, again, it's stacking. We've got another covenant stacked on top, but at the same time it's distilling. It's going further down. And the same, again, it's the same thing, but now it's different, like you said. It's still the promise of, I'm going to bless you so that you can be a blessing, which was the original promise of Eden. I'm giving you this blessed place so that it can expand and extend. And then the restart with Noah, it's still the same thing with Abraham. I'm going to multiply. You're going to become a father of nations. All this kind of language. And we have 12 the promises, 15 the covenant ceremony, the explicit covenant ceremony. which looks a lot more like the cultural form of that day.
Right. Yeah.
Even though we would still call the Noah covenant a covenant and the creation covenant a covenant, even though it doesn't have the ceremony, it still has something akin to this.
And just to flesh that out, Genesis 12 is God's initial promise to
Yes.
Abraham. Genesis 15 is the cutting of the animal.
That's right.
All that
It's
stuff.
the ceremony
Yeah.
that seals. It's like God's proposing to Abraham
Right.
in Genesis 12.
There's ceremony around it that makes it,
Official.
yeah,
Even though it was official at
yeah,
12,
yeah.
it's something
Yeah.
something important.
It doesn't lessen what happened
No.
before. Like
No.
you can take me up at my word, and we can also shake hands on it.
Correct.
A handshake
And
should mean something.
And then we could even still yet
yeah,
write a
write
contract.
it out, all that stuff. Yeah,
But that doesn't change the relationship
Right.
that undergirds
Yeah.
this agreement. And
I
that's
like
what,
that analogy actually because it is sparked from an initial. Well, we want to accomplish something
Yes.
between the two of us. We can talk about it.
Yep.
We can agree through a handshake. We can, be as official and bound to it as we can.
Correct.
But it all roots at this initial
Yes.
partnership.
this
thing.
relationship
Yeah.
thing, man. This is what it comes down to.
Yeah, that works well.
And really that's something that I'm like, not that I didn't know, but maybe I'm realizing more about the structure of covenant and how it works across the Bible. Like there's a point to it. It's not just so God can accomplish the thing he says he's going to accomplish. I mean, that's in there, but it's also because he wants to partner with his people, which is what we saw in Genesis 1 and 2. It's what we see with Noah.
Which tells you so much about like the character of God.
Yes.
And
And these covenants reflect his character. They reflect his nature. And that's why, so again, this goes to your identity thing that you were talking about, is when God reveals himself, it's not merely to accomplish a task.
Right.
It is that,
Yeah.
but it's not only that.
Yeah.
It's also to reveal himself.
Which you made a great point on Sunday about, or maybe you did. Maybe I'm jumping ahead a week. We'll see. You wrote a really good point about when they are going to leave Egypt. We're jumping ahead now, back to
That's okay.
Exodus. That the first thing they're supposed to do is go meet God on his mountain.
That's right.
And worship him.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and whenever God comes and like tells Moses to go do the thing, talk to Pharaoh, get the people out, whatever, like it's always associated with like this long preamble of "I am the Lord." This is who this is who I am kind of situation.
Yeah.
When they meet at the burning bush, I am that I am, or I am who I will be, or however you say Yahweh, or define Yahweh. But yeah, this identity moment is really important in the story. Because there's a bevy of gods to believe in, especially in the ancient Near East. So the fact that God is identifying himself it goes part and parcel with what covenant actually is.
Right.
It's a relational tie.
Yeah.
God is trying to forge a relationship with his covenant partners so that we can accomplish the thing together.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, God's going to do the
Right.
thing, but it is through his human agents, his image bearers,
Right.
that he wants to accomplish those things. And again, that speaks to the character of God. So there's a lot going on in the covenant. There's a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
And it's probably bigger than we could ever actually fully,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wrap our arms completely around.
But the more we look at it, the more I want to keep looking at
Yes.
it. Because it is more than just like God set conditions and they made a deal.
Right.
Like once you really do get into the relational aspect of it, then I don't know, it just kind of gets deeper and deeper.
Well, and like particularly in our context too, like when we think of contracts, that doesn't mean I have to have a relationship with
Right.
you. It means I have a business relationship. And like we would even know how to like distinguish between what kinds of relationships we have. Like
Which is probably why it's useful that when you were talking about God cuts in a covenant with Abraham, you likened it to like a proposal.
Yeah.
And
I think marriage is a fitting image here. Because Genesis 12 is like the engagement. Chapter 15, the actual covenant ceremony, is like when you gather in a church and, sacred words are spoken and people pray over one another. And then and now we have this officialized thing. And now what's interesting is that Genesis 17 also stands in the the street or in the hallway. I don't know how to describe
Is
it.
that when they go back and they?
That's the sign of circumcision.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's the sign
Right.
of the covenant, which is distinct from it's not a covenant ceremony so much as it is you maybe could say it this way. It's a covenant to keep the covenant.
It is interesting too. I like that, but that like through the story we kind of get like, well, this happens in this place, and this happens with these animals, or he sets up a bunch of rocks and they call it Bethel or whatever.
Right.
But the sign of circumcision, that is as personal as you can get it.
Yes.
It is a covenant sign within his people.
Right.
Not delegated to a place,
Yeah.
but to persons.
Yeah.
Which I think is significant.
It's really important. And again, wrapping our arms around that complete idea would be really hard. Because again, circumcision is a cultural thing that priests would do, particularly in Egypt and in
It
Babylon.
isn't even isolated to, that's what you're saying, not isolated to
The
this,
Israelites.
Yeah.
But the fact that it now becomes a democratic thing, if you want to say it that way,
I do want to say it that way.
it's no longer a priestly distinction. Well, but it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
the point. And we find that out in Exodus 19.
But a priestly distinction that gets delegated to who specifically? Does it have to be this priestly class? You were preaching one Sunday not that long ago and pointed out that this happened across the household.
Yeah.
From head of the household
All the way
to
down.
servants to slaves, and that there's, you can almost view that in two ways. That, Abraham as head of this whatever, imposes this on everyone who's underneath him, or it can be a great equalizer.
Yes.
As far as we are now bound to God.
Yeah, and I think that so that
Which I think is more fitting.
yes, and I obviously agree with what you're the insight that you're bringing there to it. It is that it's no longer for the select or few. It's now for this whole people, and we're going to get into it when we get into Deuteronomy and when we get into the prophets. But this sign is well, and even in the New Testament, they talk about circumcision.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Quite a bit, actually. It's almost startling how much they're talking about, how much Paul is talking to the new believers about. This new Gentile thing that's happening with the church, and how circumcision relates to all that. But yeah, it went from only the priestly class in these particular empires practice this symbol, into now this is a family who bear the mark of priests. That's the indication that we're getting.
What do you think the read on the, that region of the world as they interact with this people group? Would that say something to them about, I don't know how you communicate that to everybody who's around you, but if that was, hey, we're taking this symbol upon all of us, not just our priestly class, would that say to surrounding groups of people, we as a people are connected in service to God?
Yes.
Is that what it's meant to communicate to the surrounding people? We are a priestly people.
Yeah, and the short answer is yes.
Okay.
And I think it's a part of the design of God. That would be on the table as far as like, this is what this sign means. I think that's a part of the design. It's not the only thing that God is trying to accomplish in the sign of circumcision.
Right.
But it's one of the things he's trying to accomplish.
That's the kind of I guess to short form it, the thing I was asking is like, okay, there's the obvious, like this is a symbol between you and me kind of thing that's happening between God and his people.
Yeah.
But then also it does declare something to the surrounding nations. And if the beginning promise is, I'm going to bless you so that you can be a blessing to all nations, like that people priesthood thing is echoed all the way to the end.
All the way to the very end. And the New Testament will pick up this language that we're talking about now to describe how that gets reimagined in Jesus, how it gets distilled is the right way to say it again.
Right.
How that gets distilled in Jesus for a new people who are not just the particular ethnic family of Abraham, but also the Gentiles who will be included.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to kind of establish what we mean when we're talking about this stuff. And it's important to kind of split a couple hairs, because we do want to know what it is that these covenants and signs are pointing towards, because when the New Testament authors pick it up to utilize it, and again, reinterpret's not the right way of saying it, but
Right.
but distill what it means for us in a new way and new day, or new day and new way, is really important for our understanding, because we as Christians who look back at the whole story, or not living the story, we look back at the whole story, and it's hard to make sense sometimes of like, how does this fit in with this, and all of those things.
Right.
So the clearer we can be at the beginning and the outset, the better off we'll be when we get to the later stories that that directly impact and apply to us.
Yeah. I feel like that one in particular, just because it does come up so much in the New Testament, it really does reframe it from, well, like, why is Paul harping on and on and on and on about this particular symbol? It should mean more than a symbol within the flesh. It should resonate as a, I don't know, all the things we just said. I don't want to hash through it all again, but I do think it is interesting that it doesn't just say something to the people within the relationship, but that it also makes a declaration to those around.
This isn't just a sign for the in-group. This also declares something about the in-group's status, and about which God they declare to believe in.
Which should, I guess, long route wise, direct the nations towards, not through this particular practice, but as a symbol for, hey, this is a way, a place to, or a people that God meets with. And it's not restricted. I guess I wanted to hit that too, that it was not restricted only to Abraham's family, how would you want to say it? Not even ethnically, but familially, it was his household.
Correct.
And then as we move forward, then there are, once we get into the particulars of law, there are going to be things where it's like, hey, not even that far ahead when we're talking about Passover. Within the household, or if anybody wanted to partake in Passover.
Guess what they had to do? They had to get circumcised.
Which is like, okay, that's not nothing.
No.
But it is that would be a big step. To bind yourself in, not just in a religious practice because it hurts, but also as a symbol of, I am now a part of this covenantal relationship. Which I think is great, that it's not restrictive.
Correct.
That it is invitational. Is that the way you would put
it? Inclusive wouldn't be the right word. Invitational would be a very good word, in fact. And the fact that anyone can join in to this covenant family, and they don't have to be ethnically tied. Well, how would we establish the boundaries by which they could enter? God's given us the sign of what that looks like in the Old Testament. And there's a lot contained in the sign. What is the original blessing of the Garden of Eden about? It's about bearing children. How's the snake curse are going to come about through children? There's all kinds of stuff that's layered in there. But it definitely is a statement to the other nations about God's direct relationship with us, which then gets borne out. And we're going a little ahead here, but that's okay. When we get to the Mosaic covenant, God expressly tells them that, why do we follow these laws? Why is it that we are this way and that way? And why do we do these things? It's because the purpose of God is that this nation, which sits at the crossroads of the two great empires, you've got Egypt to the south and the west, and out to the east and the north, and maybe out to the east a little bit. You've got Babylon and Assyria, and the Medo-Persians, who kind of, they're kind of doing their whole thing out there. They sit as a crossroads in between because of so much wilderness and stuff out there. So this small group of people, they become through God's action with them, through God's self-revelation to them, they become an opportunity for God to declare His nature, His wisdom, is what He says, and it's what's expressly stated. Through the law, through the way they arrange their lives and live, they are declaring by those actions, by their covenant partnership with God, that they possess the wisdom of God, the instruction of
Right.
God, which is what Torah actually means.
Right.
We say law, but instruction is actually the word. And so as we live our lives,
Do you know the word that they use for that?
for Torah,
Uh-huh.
Torah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's law.
Is instruction.
Yes.
Okay.
And law is how we interpret it, which is the correct word. But instruction is really the idea that's contained within it. And in fact, I was listening to a podcast this week. It might have been Bible Project. I'm trying to remember. Or maybe it was some YouTube channel I watched. They were talking about how the Psalms
Yeah, I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
even bring up this idea. I'm about to give you Torah.
Yeah, and that it would be weird to read it as like, my son, listen to my law.
Yes.
Like it is instructive. Which again, I think, as we're kind of weighing these things out, law, not to say that there aren't laws, there obviously are, it is contained within it. But law is a lot more akin to contract.
Yes.
Instruction is a lot closer to relationship.
Yes.
And I think that is a better indicator of what's going on, and just makes more sense for what it is God is trying to accomplish. Like, did God write all this because he likes rules?
Right,
Like,
right.
no, but they're set up so that he can have relationship with the fallen people.
And as we get to the Mosaic covenant, that's how we'll frame that. We'll frame it in the context of this is not law in the sense of if you do this or don't do this, then you're in or out of relationship. It's more like these are the ways in which we relate.
Right.
Which again does go along with the way you phrased it. It's really less about law and it's more about instruction. And if we establish that as a major point here in the Old Testament, that's going to benefit us later when we get into the New Testament. It's going to benefit us when David does stuff like take the showbread.
Yeah.
Which you're not supposed to do. He's not a priest. It helps us make sense of the things that Jesus will pick up and Paul will pick up as examples of the utilization of the law to make a deeper and more important point, which goes back to covenant relationship and covenant partnership. So if we establish right out of the gate that this is not law as such, there are laws, but these laws are intended for God to be able to relate with man and man to relate back with God. That's the point of all this.
Yeah, and I mean, it gets real simple if we look at like any of our like modern standard law. Like the stop sign is there and it tells me I have to stop.
Yeah.
Not for no reason.
Correct.
It is to keep me and the other people around safe in the road.
It's a way of relating.
Yeah.
While we're on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the better way to frame it. So. And again, as God establishes those things, whether it's the covenant of Noah, the covenant of Abraham, or later on the covenant of Moses, the point is not merely for the in group. The point is to make a statement that these people possess a wisdom that is not of themselves, and that they are wanting to share that wisdom, so that maybe you would be I don't know, enticed is not the right word, but
I think
interested
in a way, when we were talking about, what's going on in the region around them with like Babylon and Assyria, and then is it farther out is Persia? Persia comes down
Persia
later.
comes down later. They're
Big
all in the mix
history
there.
Stuff. But that, to imagine, this is your conduct under my law or whatever, within this covenant relationship, they would look very different than Babylon and Assyria and Persia.
Very, very different.
So to imagine that everything in the ancient world looks similar, we already said that, circumcision as a sign of priesthood or covenant or whatever isn't exclusive to the family of Abraham, but they utilize it to communicate something specific. So I think in the same way, if these are the laws and practices that Moses relays to the people from God, there will be crossover with some of the nations around them.
Absolutely.
But even if there is, it will communicate something wildly different than the context they're living in, and not for no reason.
And that's really important to say, because the way that law works in the ancient conception, and even in the modern conception to an extent, but in the ancient conception, it's particularly, law is how you establish order. Okay, well, what did God bring order to in the creation when he speaks? By the way, in the creation narrative, God speaks 10 times.
We're going to get to that.
Okay. We're going to get there. So it's 7 days of creation, but he speaks 10 times. So that's really interesting. But what he's doing is he's bringing order out of chaos. And so so when all these guys, Hammurabi, okay, all these guys, when they're making law codes, what they're claiming about their law codes is that these are divine.
Yeah.
And that the wisdom isn't just generated here in my mind. It's actually that I have a divine right to share these with you.
Right.
And what these things that I'm telling you do is they produce an ordering that is smiled on or given favor, or as you could say, blessed by the gods.
Yeah.
So when Moses brings out a law code, an instruction code, however you want to say it, the purpose for the other nations in seeing it is that they will look at the way this people lives. They'll see the order from chaos.
Yeah.
They'll see the way that this God relates
this
with
is
these.
what he says to you, is
it.
what it says to them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is kind of a callback to an earlier series that you did, which I think you mentioned it this last Sunday too, that ideas are spiritual.
That's right.
Where do they come from? And of course there's the obvious, like this made me think of this.
Yeah.
But trail it back far enough, where do ideas come from? I think that there's a lot to be said, and especially within this context, like you're saying, like, well, this is our law from our God.
Yeah.
What is he saying to
Right.
you? And I mean, before I kind of want to land the plane on covenant.
Yes.
But
we haven't even.
While we're talking about Babylon, Assyria, and Persia,
might as well.
This people group is going to interface with each one of those directly. They're either going to come down into where they are, or they're going in.
Right.
So this covenantal relationship that is going to get reestablished and reaffirmed and distilled down and more specific through the covenant through Moses needs to set them as distinct to what's around them. And also they need to be able to keep that as these other nations come in or as they go out.
Yes.
It has to go with them. And what's going with them isn't a bunch of, I mean, it is in part, it's within it is a bunch of law and practice, but to accomplish what? That whether this other nation comes in and is ruling over you, I am with you even to the end of the age, or whether you go in.
Guess what? I'm there too.
Yeah.
That is, and it's interesting. Then again, why does God speak to us through word and through the writing of this book? Well, this is why. It's because we can't have God physically with us at all time and space. At least not in this paradigm. Not in the exilic paradigm that we live in now. So how do we carry God with us? Deuteronomy 6. I mean, this is what it comes down to. It's like these words that I'm giving you today, they are to be put on your forehead, in your mind, and where? In your heart.
Yeah.
So it's like God accompanies me through what he speaks through his word.
Yeah. Which I think, I want to jump into the next thing, but that makes it such a big deal when it just left my brain. I think it starts with a J. King whatever finds the law again. Josiah. And they take it to
Huldah the priestess.
Huldah. Yeah, that's such a big deal.
It's huge.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
I don't know when. All right.
So okay, but let's like you said, let's tie off. Oh wait. Do you want to talk Empire still?
No, I want to leave Empire alone because we'll get there eventually.
Get there.
But the reason
tie off Covenant here,
I do, because the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because we are a week or two away from
a huge deal.
Yeah, the next big covenant.
Yes.
So I wanted to reestablish the ground that we're on, not just as remember when we talked about that, but that the conditions still stand.
Yeah.
The promises still stand. We're still looking for the fulfillment of the same things.
Yeah.
The context is different. They're going to be in a different space. It's a different group of people, and this isn't the last time it's going to happen and need to get reiterated.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point out what it is we're looking for. We're headed into something else as we transition out of Egypt and into wilderness and then into Promised Land.
That's right.
So there's a lot coming up that I just kind of want to do a run-up for.
Oh my! Well, I appreciate you doing that, and also it's helpful for us to keep pounding back on this idea of like, why is covenant even necessary? Because we're in exile. Like we don't need covenant we don't need the express revelation of God as his identity, as well as the way he wants us to live in relationship to him. Because that's how we're supposed to live, because we're image bearers. I mean, it all comes back to Genesis 1 and 2, like we've been saying.
Yeah.
But we don't need covenant when we're face to face, as it were, with
Right.
God. When we're living faithfully. We need covenant when we are wandering, as it were, and are looking for the meaning and direction and purpose of our lives.
Yeah.
And so covenant comes down into that. God comes down into that and establishes, here's the way we're going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing you as my people because I don't want it, because I want that choosing to then become an opportunity for you to partner with me to spread my will, my way, my way of viewing the world out towards the world.
Yeah. And I guess I almost wanted to say ironically, but it's not ironically at all, that like, well, we need covenant as exiles so that we can learn to be in right relationship with God. Well, so far in the story, anytime one of the major characters that we've been following has held up their end of the covenant, it's described as them walking with God. So it's like, okay,
we're right back to the garden.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
that language.
it accomplishes in getting us to, or maybe a foreshadowing of what it'll be like ultimately to be in right relationship and right space with God. Is that the way to say it?
Yes, it is. Okay. What's pinging on my brain right now is like, if you think about the way that the other gods of the nations operate, they're capricious, they're mean, they're using people.
And is there any promise of a reciprocal relationship?
Not really. It's like, you better obey me or I'll
there's an
destroy
appeasing.
you. Yeah,
and then
appeasing is a good word.
Yeah.
There's an appeasing going on. And it's all for the God's benefit.
Right.
Whereas the way that Yahweh, Elohim, works is he steps into to not be appeased. He wants a relationship.
And also becomes the means of whatever appeasing has to happen.
Yeah, there's something really interesting about even the form of covenant that God is offering.
Yeah.
It's different even than the form of covenant that like maybe the other nations would understand.
Which again is another really good point, that even if there is cultural overlap in the way that you describe your God or stories or whatever, the God of like Yahweh would be a very strange God to the ancient
very
world.
Strange.
Very.
And I like that you said it that way. The way that maybe like Gordon Fee would say this is he would say adopt versus adapt.
Yeah.
And so like it seems like God is adopting a cultural form, but he's adapting it to imply something else, to tell a different narrative.
Which isn't the only thing that's happening, but
no, but it's one
when
of the
it
layers.
does happen, we call that a polemic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a polemic against. Again, we've talked about punk rock and all that. Okay, we've already
We've
said
done
that. let me make sure we're filming.
Okay,
here.
cool.
Since we don't have, we're good.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, great.
This is one that I've never thought of before, and I might be a little surprised if you actually have an answer.
I'm nervous.
Okay, so Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, right? And then God gives him a promise and says, like, you'll have these lands and nations and all that stuff. Generations go down, and we get all the way down to Jacob, and now they're supposed to go into Egypt. And God says, like, I will go with you, and your descendants will return and all that. When they are going to enter the promised land, this is jumping forward. So we still have to, in our timeline, leave Egypt, go into wilderness, and then enter into the promised land. Is this in that same area? I have another question coming off of that.
What do you mean?
So I guess me, as a person looking at the Bible, I want to get better at being a student of the geography of the story that's going on. So when they are going to go into the promised land, is this a place where Abraham and his descendants were dwelling before?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, here's my bigger question.
Yeah.
When Abraham and his descendants settled before they go into Egypt, things are going great.
Yeah.
Like, they're a huge people, they're doing well, all the way up to the big famine that happens, and God leads them into Egypt. When we go back, it is a wild place.
Yes.
Like, the way that even the agriculture is described in some of these places, the grapes are huge or whatever, and that there is a people group there now that we don't get told about in Abraham's day.
Yeah.
these people are giants. So we'll get there when we
Yeah.
get there. But
Yeah.
my question is, do we have, I don't think it talks about it in the Bible. Do we have any other references of like what's going on in this land during their time in Egypt? We got 400 years that are covered. What's happening
Yeah.
out there?
Yeah, okay. We do have like some glimpses. Okay, we've got God talking about with Abraham, like the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full. Okay,
Okay.
so we know that there are people that are, doing a thing, whatever that thing is. We're going to find out some more of that later with Molech and
Okay, maybe that's important too, that like Abraham settles in this land
yeah.
and seems to be welcome to do so
Right.
and is living there. But there are also other peoples
Oh yeah,
there.
oh yeah. There's already other people
So
inhabiting
just because
the
they
land.
leave doesn't
Yeah,
mean that
the land lays
there's-
dormant.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There and this is the area, particularly as you get near to like modern day Jerusalem, as you get closer to the Mediterranean Sea, and wherever there's rivers and
Right.
fresh bodies of water, it's
where
a fertile
yeah.
it's a fertile land. And that's how it's described when we get to Joshua. Well, even before we get to Joshua, that's how it's described,
Right.
actually. A land flowing with milk and honey. In fact, God even uses that language before we get to, kind of the conquest narratives and those kinds of things. He tells Moses that's where you're headed, is into a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, how is that the case? How can you have a land flowing with milk and honey? You have to cultivate it. And so there are people there,
right.
and they've grown numerous, and there's kings, and there's I don't know if you want to say nation states, but there's tribes or groups together that
Right.
formed and live there. There's cities built, we find out later on, like Jericho, for
Right.
instance. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the space. Now we have to do some reconstruction.
Right.
Now, thankfully, we do have things like scholarship, so we hear about the people of the Ugaritic people. We hear about the Sumerians. So we have some framework from scholarship, and we do have ancient documents, but a lot of that's coming Egypt, Babylon, Assyria. We don't have a whole bunch in this particular strip.
Right.
On the other side of the Jordan River, leading up to now. We do have Phoenician though, and we have.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that we do know, and they're the timelines and things. We can make really good guesses and estimates about the lineup. But yeah, there's people in this land cultivating this land. Things are going on. Is that your question?
No, I mean, I think I assumed that there were people
Right.
there, but I think maybe in a narrative arc way.
Oh, okay.
The thing that I'm thinking about is, if I put it this way, when Abraham first goes into Egypt, it's not good. And it's on Abraham. His conduct is not right. And the Egyptians actually
Yeah, they
do
tell him
pretty
stuff.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
They call him out on it, and then
they
they're not
bless
even that
him.
bad to him.
Yeah.
So when he goes in, it's no good.
Right.
And then generations down, God says, don't go into Egypt.
Right.
And then when it comes to the time of Joseph, Jacob and his family, they go into Egypt, and because of the recognition that God is blessing these people,
Yeah.
they're welcomed in, and they're given great land, they're given good position, all this stuff. So there's a time within the narrative as far as the relationship with Egypt that says like, this is not the place to be.
Yeah.
And then later on, it becomes, this is the place to be.
Yep.
Now, it almost seems like an inverse with Abraham, here's going to be your promised area.
Yep.
You settle here. It seems like the people in Abraham's family do well together. Things are going great. And then when they leave, well, let's get back to the place where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And when they return, well, suddenly we have,
Clash.
we're going to have big wars and, I mean, really stuff that's not fun to talk about at all.
Yeah.
I guess, it's easier for me to trace the story as we look at the line of Jacob and Joseph and be like, oh, look, we have a very detailed story of what it's like as God positions a member of his covenant family in a place where he can be a blessing to his family and nations around him. That's an easy one because we have a view from the inside. I guess what happens within the promised land that makes this group of people, and I understand 400 years passes, 400 plus, what happens within this region of the world where they once inhabited it, and now going back in, they can't settle the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I would, and help me if my train of thought is off here, or if I'm not answering the question the right way. what pings against my brain is what we've got going on is we've got people claiming this territory differently than they were in the days of Abraham.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, and because I think when we're talking about, you know, these very ancient people groups, there's kind of a looseness in the way that the text describes the particulars. So for Abraham to take his people and his flocks and whatever else to this area, maybe this area it's okay for him to be in because no one's claimed this space, no one's built homes, towns, cities, whatever in these spaces.
Where when we jump forward 400 plus years, now we do have
that
cities and
because the people in that area have multiplied,
right?
And as opposed to maybe, well, not opposed to, I think what's going on is the cities are developing. I mean, the cities develop, then you can have, you know, it's like it is here in the U.S. Like you might have a country town outside of the city,
right?
But then
eventually
people move out to that from the city because they don't want to be in the city grind.
Yeah.
And so, but then what happens is that place becomes more established, and then people leave that space and go further out. I think that's probably what's going on.
Okay. So in a city structure type of way, I'm tracking with you. That makes more sense. The relationship to settling in a land would change as the context of that.
Yeah. Because now you've got people claiming this space.
Right. Now, I guess on top of that, my other question is, do we have any indication of what's going on there? Because, I mean, Abraham is settling with these other people in his day, and let's say there's not the same type of structures or borders or whatever.
Right.
But also, Abraham doesn't talk about there being giants in the land at all. Yeah. When they do go back, it's kind of a big deal.
Suddenly they're there. Yeah, it's a great question, and
not to jump too far ahead. But I'm kind of wondering what's happening while this is happening here in our story. What's happening over here?
Yeah, well, and again, we've got and there's a lot of stuff that I need to rebuff up on as we head into those particular narratives, because I've shifted my focus to Passover and things like that. But as we leave, and as we're about to head into the land, I'm going to read a little bit more of the scholarship on this, but. We remember what the giants were called. They're the Nephilim. Okay, they were the men of renown.
Yeah,
they were the ones that led people. So it would stand to reason that in a tribal society, that the strongest person gets to dictate what's going on. And we don't have to like go outside of the Bible to read that.
Right.
We just read in Judges what's going on.
That's just how it works.
That's just how it works.
So, I wonder if there's also something to that then. If it is like, you know, powerful people get to establish the rules or whatever. If that also means, well, if this is the men of renown, if it is the Nephilim, who previously in the story are absolutely against God.
Right.
Well, if they are now setting up cities, then the tone and ambition of that city
will reflect will reflect their viewpoints. I mean, it's like what we have with the Tower of Babel. It's like what we have with the cities of Cain, and Lamech.
Yeah.
So there's a sense in which
it's a repeat.
It's a repeat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that? Am I answering your question?
No.
Okay,
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, I was assuming that we'll have to do a little more digging on that.
Yes,
if there is things to know there.
Yes, and we're gonna because even the names that we struggle to read, you know, the Jebusites and the Hittites and the whoever'ites, okay, there are going to be particular names that have
carry connections to
to what we've already read in Genesis chapter 6 and Genesis chapter 11, and they're going to call forward to even things that David's going to face. So there's a lot contained in there.
There's a narrative thread to follow there.
Oh boy, there is.
All right, I just want to bounce that one off you because I want to know, and also I was like, let me see if David knows this one.
And I'm not sure I'm answering the question.
I thought I was being clever. Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about when it says Israel is my son, or does it say my firstborn son? What does it say?
I believe it says firstborn, but I think it's 423.
Where my mind goes with that is that the firstborn element of it means a lot to me. If the ambition is I will bless you to be a blessing to the nations, if it's like, hey, this is my group of people, my first. Well, that would imply that there are others to come. Is this a Is it implying that like, hey, it doesn't stop here. It's not distinctly this.
Yeah. Well, and we've even had that in the narrative so far, right? Because Isaac is not the firstborn son.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, okay, and to not tie too tightly to we've pointed that out a few times that there is this pattern of the second
Subversion.
in line being the one to carry on the promise,
right.
superseding the firstborn in a very particular way. Not every time.
Not every time.
Because you have people like Joseph, you have Judah.
That's right.
It's not a perfect metric, but we do watch for it.
That's right.
I don't think that would apply here when he says my first son, or we wouldn't look at like my one and only son Jesus. Like, is he going to have another son? We wouldn't do that. You know?
Exactly.
So the firstborn son language. I'm not trying to tie it to the first second.
How about
born
this?
thing.
We tie it loosely because there is something contained in there, but it's not as in other words, we don't need to create too hard a theological or doctrinal statement on it necessarily. Not until at least we're told something. We need to look for the Bible to tell us something about that.
Right.
So what I think is going on here is actually status. This is about status.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not. It's about through whom the blessing is routing.
Okay.
Through whom God's favor and blessing will reside. So this is about status more than it's about progeny particularly.
Right. Okay.
Although it does deal with that as well.
Okay.
So it's kind of both.
I got you. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm right, but I think you're more right.
No, I think we're both right. That's what I'm saying. Is we're both right.
Yeah. Okay. I think my assumption of, well, if it's a first, then there has to be more, which means the blessing to the nations
is still on the table.
Is on the table.
Check.
But I like what you're saying about it does communicate something about this particular people, especially within the context of they are enslaved and oppressed at this moment.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is a status claim for a lowly
for a nobody
people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm tracking with you.
It's both. That's what I'm trying to say. So now whether we could tie that to Isaac or we could tie it forward or whatever, that remains to be seen as the Bible will interpret the Bible. But that is on the table for sure.
Okay.
That is on the table for sure.
Okay.
And there's a lot more to say here. We should let this one sit.
Okay.
For a little while before we try to over-explain it.
Okay.
Because we're gonna understand what this means as we get into Exodus 19 through 24 and on into Deuteronomy.
Okay.
We're gonna find out that God's covenant partnership is not merely a partnership of strangers, but it's a partnership of families. Okay, and I know that's already on the table because Abraham and the family and all those things, but the way that God is now talking about them is not merely, you're a people I chose. No, I chose you so that you would come in. I'm not using the right language at this moment, but it's far more relational than it is just a moniker.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I'll find words to describe that as we get into Deuteronomy.
That's one of the ones where I was saying earlier. I keep jumping back to these concrete moments. I am looking forward to Deuteronomy more and more and more as we look at the context of this.
So maybe as I'm thinking here, as you're talking and we're pinging these back and forth, it's helping me distill in my brain a little bit too about maybe what's the summary statement of what I want to say here. Before it's God is choosing these people, out from, that's what is going on with Abraham. And we might want to cut the relationships. Like what is it that God is trying to do with these people? We might want to try and distinguish the relationships. Is this a business relationship? What kind of partnership are we talking about here? Those kinds of things. This claim right here about firstborn son jumps over those things, goes past those things, and goes into a different kind of thing. This is no longer just about you are a people that you're a people distinct from me, and I've chosen to work with you. And let me phrase it this way: we have in the ancient Near Eastern cultures suzerain and vassal covenants. Suzerain is like the top tier king, okay. And they would make covenants with vassals. And vassals are those who carry out the bidding and the will of the suzerain. But the suzerain is obviously the more powerful one. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the form of covenant that it's one of the forms of covenant that we're used to. There's other forms of covenant. There's salt covenants. There's all kinds of covenants in there. Okay. But suzerain vassal is one of the main ones that we can look back in utilizing our scholarship of today, and see. And but that's not that's a different kind of relationship. That's not familial.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's an arrangement.
So is that what you're saying is getting set up here?
Yes.
When he says, "This is my firstborn."
Yes.
Is saying, "Hey, I'm going to communicate the terms."
Yep.
Is what he's going to do, but then also like they are your. I don't even know, is authority the right word, or would it be reference point?
Keep going. Keep saying your sentence.
So if you're saying it's positional,
Yeah.
and saying like this is my firstborn,
Yeah.
and that's declared to Egypt specifically,
Yeah.
but the nations,
Yes. But also to Israel.
yeah, that they. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Also to Israel,
Yeah.
they must uphold their end of the covenant
Yes.
so that they can.
Yes. Stay in right relationship as a signifier of their status that God is calling them into. And again,
And if they don't do that right, they cannot do their role properly for the rest. Oh my word, David, this is doing.
So
this totally gets into the whole. Do not take the Lord's name in vain, or don't bear the Lord's name in vain.
Because whose name is on you?
Right, and for what purpose? Oh my.
Because we're a family.
Yeah.
This is the point, and this is why. And not to negate what you said at all, because that is on the table. That's a part of what's going on. There's going to be more.
Right.
And as we get in the New Testament, we really get clarity on what this means. And Jesus even specifically talks about who is the Son of God.
Right.
And the Pharisees are answering, it's Israel.
Right.
Because we have that express statement here in Exodus 4:23. But there's more going on. That's the whole point. And the more that's going on is that this is not just an arrangement of king to king or something like that, like the suzerain vassal would be.
Right.
No, this is a family covenant.
Okay. Can I put it in for my sake?
Yeah.
Really simple terms, as far as siblings in a household.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are leaving the house. You guys know the rules. You're in charge.
Right.
Is kind of what's happening.
That's kind of what's going on here.
Okay.
Yeah. And generally that's going to be the eldest kid, right?
Right.
You know, okay. All of that's on the table. So this is a status claim.
Okay.
And it's not that Israel generates that status as we are God's
They have nothing to
chosen.
flex at this point.
No.
Yeah.
They're no ones.
Yeah.
It's that God is ascribing this moniker to them. So, and this is going to be
a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Ooh.
It's a huge deal, and it's going to become a bigger deal as the story progresses, as each new covenant iteration goes on.
That is beautiful, because that now sets me up to read my Bible in a different way around, like the sonship language that God uses again and again and again and again, where I'm just like, oh, God likes that, and I can understand, like,
He
loves all his children, which is true and good and beautiful, but like we said, you're setting the stage in a whole different way for me to understand the rest of the narrative. This is good. I like this a lot.
Yeah, and we need to explore this more.
Okay.
In later episodes, we're gonna have to come back to this as we get into Exodus 19 through 24, and then later on when we get into Deuteronomy. And again, when we get to the Davidic covenant.
Right.
And again, as we start talking about new covenant language with Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Daniel.
I am so looking forward to
because it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very exciting. When's the last time you got excited about the prophets, Mr. Moffat?
I don't think I particularly got excited about the prophets.
Jim just sat down with that.
Same. But like as I think about the narrative, like something is there's a through thread that the prophets are pulling
what it is it's working in the way we've been talking about it. Like, okay, they're living with an expectation of something.
Yes.
So now suddenly when I read the prophets, I'm not just like, what are they talking about that's going to either about to happen or happen way down the road? Because God does that sometimes. He just tells people what's happening. No, I as the reader am now living in expectation of something to happen.
You got it.
It's changed my relationship
Yeah.
to the prophets. Good job.
And to the way that Jesus will utilize
Yes.
their language to express his status.
It is a great spot because all the prophets are suddenly pointing
Yeah.
at Jesus.
Yes.
And how does Jesus affirm his status and identity? By pointing back at what the prophets
To what
said
we're reading.
and like living it out. It's incredible.
And it's why the Old Testament is so important for the New Testament.
Yeah.
Like, it's appropriate in evangelism settings to like go creation straight to Jesus.
Yeah.
And then to now the church.
Yeah.
That's appropriate.
Yeah.
No one's saying anything like
Yeah.
that. But again, it's like the more you study this thing, the more you start making these connections and realizing that Jesus is doing far more than simply getting us into heaven when we die.
Right. Or to sit too cozy in just the New Testament because that's all you
Yes.
really need. Like,
Right.
oh, you'd be missing more than. Oh, my word. It drives me up the wall. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and again, like in a cursory conversation, fine.
Sure.
Fine. We
Yeah.
want to get people to Jesus because that's what
Yeah.
the whole story is about. But
Yeah.
if we're talking
Could you
about
read the Gospels and know Jesus?
Amen.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And those would be a great place to send a new convert to, a new believer to understand what Jesus is all about. But he's going to reference stuff.
He's almost exclusively going to quote.
The Old Testament. A lot of Deuteronomy, a lot of Isaiah.
So if you
lot
love
of
the New
Psalms.
Testament and you love Jesus,
You need
you
to
love
read
your
it.
Old Testament.
That's right. And you need to read it
You love the
because
prophets.
it's going to deepen our appreciation for what it is that he's doing and the claims that he's making. Again, we keep coming back to this idea of like, we keep talking about Jesus is appearing, these Christophanies in the Old Testament, those kinds of things. But like, it's more than that.
Yeah.
Because people will say things like, well, Jesus never expressly says that he's the Son of God. Well, but hold on. But hold on. Because he's going to quote stuff.
Yeah.
Like Exodus chapter 4, verse 23,
Yeah.
but he's going to utilize it in a way that points to himself. And,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of cultural stuff going on that we're liable to miss. Or what we'll do is we'll misinterpret,
We'll miscontextualize what he's saying.
Bingo.
Yeah.
which might get us to a different meaning than what Jesus is actually trying to convey.
Right.
Which then leads us to maybe not a great application of the interpretation.
Which brings us back to what we talk about all the time with exegesis, eisegesis.
That's right.
Am I emphasizing the Jesus in the... I felt weird when I said it. Exegesis? Anyways.
You saying it right.
Okay, good. All
You're
right.
saying it right.
Exegesis.
Yeah, it's not just about reading ourselves into the text or trying to, like I used to do when I was a kid. God, what do you want me to read today?
Right. Your Bible is a magic 8-ball.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a story that
Yeah.
is meant to be studied.
Yeah.
And the more you study it, the more you find God's heart.
I think we've talked about this before, that as wonderful as the Word of God is, I'm not trying to detract from that at all, but to flip open randomly, sometimes it's going to be great and wonderful.
God can use
That's also
that.
a very dangerous thing to do.
That's right.
Very, very dangerous
Yeah,
thing to do.
because
Think of
these-
books like Job,
For sure.
where
For
it's
sure.
like, hey, what is it? Maybe like 2/3 of that are a counter argument
Yes.
that isn't in line.
Correct.
So if you
Yeah.
know,
And it's not until the last 2 or 3 chapters.
where it gets established
That's
that, hey,
right.
no, this is what God is about, and this is what he actually. So that's just a little quick cautionary thing. Treat
Words
your
don't
Bible
e-
for what it is because you're supposed to.
That's right. And words don't exist in vacuums. They exist in a context. And they exist within a network of contexts
Yes.
that might lay on top of one another in the same way that covenants stack with one another and deepen down both at the same time.
Way to bring us back
So
in.
you
That was
can't just
Yeah.
So you can't just rip them out of their context. Or how about this? Try and make arbitrary distinctions within those covenants because they don't operate that way. They're told
Interesting.
within a story and within a context.
good. Right.
And so we need the later story to help shed light.
Can you give me an example of that? Or I could do it if you want.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
We're way ahead, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay because it's okay to flash forward. So, for instance, some people will say of the Mosaic covenant that there's ceremonial, ritual, and civic law.
Okay.
Or civil law.
Okay.
Those distinctions are really hard to make because sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And then to say, okay, well, some of the law, in an attempt to do fairness to the words of Jesus and Paul in the New Testament and the other writers of the New Testament, we try to make some of these distinctions about what was a forever law, for instance, and what was not,
Right.
and why it was not. Well, it was a ritual law only meant
Right.
for. Now, it's not to say that there aren't particular laws that have particular aspects to them. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But to say that maybe the civil law was for then and at that time only.
So is this similar to I think the language I've heard around it would be like, okay, what if we're talking about the law of Moses, I've heard it put as what is covenantal law versus
Right.
moral law,
Correct.
or another way it's been put is, well, let me just settle it there. Is that a fair way to treat it? I mean, like you said, like,
Right.
they overlap a lot, and I think you would misstep if you picked one or the other,
Correct.
which people do.
Which people do.
Yeah.
That's a part of the issue is when we start to try and examine what is my relationship to the Old Testament law, what as a Christian who lives on this side of Jesus.
Yeah.
What is my relationship? Because again, if we're going to say, okay, well, you should read your Old Testament, well, aren't we supposed to be doing what the Bible says? That's the question that should generate.
Right, and I think because of that, it was like, well, how many letters did we get from Paul where he argues that exactly?
Yes.
So it's not like we're not creating a problem. It is also the natural response
Yes.
to, well, if this is God's law, I should be doing it,
should be
right?
doing it.
But again, to jump back 10 minutes ago,
Right.
to, well, why? And
Right.
what is the law meant to accomplish?
Yes.
And as we, get to the showbread and all that stuff that
Yep.
we're going to talk about, circumcision, all this stuff, it is meant to it is the means to accomplish something,
Yes.
which doesn't, I think it was our last episode. We're not trying to undo the law.
Correct.
Or wipe it off the table
Correct.
completely. There's absolutely a bunch of stuff that
Yes.
we ought to be doing right now.
Yeah.
Does that mean all of it? And so I guess while we're in the conversation of context being key,
Yeah.
that also applies to what we're running up to real quick with Mosaic Covenant,
All those
Law,
things.
Deuteronomy, Leviticus.
Yes, and that's why I think this pre-conversation is valuable to maybe establish some guidelines by which we approach these things. Because again, if I say ceremonial or covenant or moral or ritual or civil or whatever, I think I'm starting to parcel out the text in a way that the text doesn't do it itself.
Okay.
And I'm trying to create distinctions, maybe on this side of Jesus, that Jesus himself doesn't extend himself to make.
Right.
Because what he says is that none of the law is going to pass away.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but
Yeah.
also all of the law is filled full or fulfilled
Right.
in love your neighbor as yourself and first to love God.
How
and
do you
then
make
love
sense
neighbor.
of those things?
How do we make
Again,
sense of those things?
I would say it does not hold up or work well
Yeah.
if we are talking about contract
Yep.
versus if we're talking about relationship.
Well, and that's a part of the point that I'm trying to make is that if I try to make distinctions about what was temporary or what was merely a law for them in their way in their day,
right.
then I'm not saying it in a way that actually benefits someone else.
Right.
If that makes sense. I'm not leading someone towards instruction from the law, which is how Paul would utilize it and how Jesus would utilize it.
Yeah.
Because now what I'm saying is, well, some of these laws we can just kind of ignore and we don't really have to pay attention to
Which
them because
we don't want to be that loose and
Do you get what I'm
free-handed
trying
with
to
it.
say?
Yeah, I get what you're
Yeah,
saying because,
yeah.
like, look at the way that Jesus approaches the Sabbath.
Absolutely.
He almost exclusively does a bunch of miracles on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And then also when he talks about it, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
That's right.
And so does that mean, like, so there is no Sabbath?
Correct.
Like,
No, it doesn't mean that. Yeah.
What is the Sabbath meant to accomplish, and what are
Correct.
we actually doing?
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of well, are we trying to make it so it's like, well, we can do without these ones or these ones, or
Right.
this belongs within this context or
Right.
whatever, and to not define it. Depending on how you view it, tragically, that means you have to do your due diligence and look at the context and what is meant to be accomplished for each. I don't have a catalog of every law that's
Yeah,
in there. I know
right.
you don't either.
I don't.
So as we are living our lives and trying to live not just lawfully, but honoring the Lord.
That's right.
It does take examining the Word of God.
Yes.
And finding out what those things are.
Yeah.
And working your way through your own, this cultural context as well as your own.
Well, and I think, and 100% true. And I also think that there's a way in which we enshrine things that were never meant to be enshrined. They and so again, if I view the law as God's final word or only word for the way in which I relate to Him, then why should I not be following the 613 do's and don'ts that come out of that Mosaic law? And why is it that Jesus can play a little fast and loose with the Sabbath?
Yeah.
Or is that even the right category to say it? You know what I mean?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I would.
That. Yeah, I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, because if that was the case, then out of how many laws are there?
613.
613, we get a handful that people like Jesus and Paul and Peter will address directly.
Yeah.
And which does a great job to point out what's really underneath, I think is their point. But if that was the case, we could only write off a few. And this is
but see that's the category that might come as a result of nuanced thinking, or may not, but either way, what happens though in practice is the Pharisees.
Thanks for supporting us by watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications when we post.
So we got capped, unfortunately, here in our conversation, so we weren't unable to kind of expressly state a finishing idea on the law. Why don't we just say this and kind of closing on that? Because unfortunately we missed some of the dialogue. But ultimately we want to say this about the law. I like the paradigm that you've set up for us, which is that we need to be looking at law not as law, but as instruction. Now, again, you've also said, though, let's not play fast and loose with what that means, because we can't make the Bible say whatever we want just because we're giving it a different paradigm. We're still utilizing the words that are utilized by the biblical authors to describe what it is that we're looking at. Torah does not mean law in maybe the way that we understand it. It does mean instruction. There are laws in it, so let's not, like you said, let's not play fast and loose. But at the same time, having a paradigm by which we view the law not as an ultimately enshrined thing, but as how Paul would talk about it. It's a tutor. It's moving us towards instruction. And for what purpose, I think we will discuss more and more fully.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Moffat, Mr. Jim, came and asked a really great question, and he was asking, to what degree does the law also accomplish an identity for these people that are coming out of Egypt, for the Israelites? Because it's, they've been in Egypt for 400 years, as you were saying, more. How much are they Egyptian? How much are they Israelite? How much do they even know their own stories? I mean, is that why Moses even needs to sit down and write out Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus? Okay, so it's a really, really good question, Mr. Jim. I love it so much.
And I think the answer to how much of it are they descendants of Abraham, how much of it are they taking an Egyptian people ethnically or as a tradition or whatever, I think the answer would be yes. Yeah. And that's why God is going to re-identify who he is.
Correct.
The terms of the covenant, all that stuff. It is a re-establishing moment.
Yes.
And one of the things that's happening as we move into covenant and wilderness and promised land and all that stuff that we were mentioning before, is that the dialogue is going to shift from not exclusively, but God addressing Egypt and the nations as far as this is who I am and this is what I'm going to accomplish. These are my people. It's now going to go in-house so that it can get established and then go out again.
And that's really valuable to say, and that's even how the prophets are going to operate. Sorry, that's how the beginning prophets, because we have Samuel and we have we've got King David to an extent in the Psalms, and we've got some of the prophets that are operating within the initial kingdom of Israel, but then later it's going to actually go back out, because some of the prophets are going to be talking about Babylon and Tyre and Edom and blah blah blah. But it's important what you're saying, because that's exactly the purpose of this next covenant that we're going to read about, this Mosaic law, because again it does establish a culture, an identity, a people group. But you brought up the point, which didn't get on the camera, you brought up the point that even there, the edges, we keep saying this,
Yeah.
the edges of that identity are fuzzy.
Right.
We have a core idea.
Well, is this what you're getting at? Who are the people who are
Yes.
coming out of Egypt?
Yes, it's not just the Israelites, as
Yeah.
you pointed out.
Yeah. So when God is communicating, this is who I am, this is the terms of the covenant, and this is who you are as a nation,
Yeah.
that's not exclusively
Yes.
the descendants of Abraham. There are Egyptians who enter the covenantal promise, and we're told this is what it looks like if you want to be a part of the covenantal promise.
That's right.
So two things are happening. God is reestablishing within his covenant people his identity and who they are, and he is, I think the way we said it earlier was, is it invitational?
It's invitational.
These are the terms.
You can come in.
You can. The formation that needs to happen there is twofold for the people who would count themselves as already a part
Right.
of this covenant group,
Yes.
and those who are now attaching themselves to it, which is not a exclusive idea. This whole idea of grafting in is one that
Yes.
runs and runs and runs.
Yes, it does. And in other words, there's a reason that Paul can look back in his Old Testament and utilize the scripture, almost these explicit scriptures, to talk about how, in Romans 10, for instance, that there's a grafting in that occurs, because that's happening in the text that we're reading right now.
Yeah.
And so, man, Jim, we're going to talk about this more as we get into Exodus 19 through 24, later on in Deuteronomy as well, as we kind of look at the law specifically, because the law is doing something for exiles. It's establishing a homeland and home rules for the homeland. Does that make sense? Maybe that's the, you know what I mean?
I think it is within the context, if we're talking broadly,
Yeah.
what does it look like for you and I as people who are citizens of a kingdom?
Yes.
In this already not yet kind of way that we've been talking about it. For them, well, this is now a nation,
Yes.
a nation who was in bondage, and now a nation who is going into the wilderness.
Yep.
So what is a nation without a promised land?
That's right.
Does that mean that the terms are not established or whatever? Well, this is the importance again of relationally.
That's it.
What does it mean for them to be a nation of a people who are allegiant to Yahweh?
Yep.
Does that make sense? Did I run that out okay?
Yes. How do I fulfill the relational requirements of God in order to maintain my status as covenant partner with Him?
You could even put it this way, that like, okay, this nation, if that's how we're going to frame it for now, this nation, if we were talking about anybody else in that timeline, we'd be like, well, Egypt is here, Babylon's here, we could go and go and go. We would talk about it locationally.
Yeah.
Well, this group of people is about to do some wandering.
Yeah.
What does it look like to be a nation wherever that is that it's going?
Yeah, and I think that wilderness is also another theme of the Bible, and it relates to exile, because exiles generally have to go out into the wilderness.
Right.
But wilderness is also I don't want to.
I think we should save that for next.
I don't want to jump into, because we got to go. We got to get out there first.
I got ideas on that one.
We got to get out there first. But yeah, there's something important transitionally about what it means to have come from bondage and to get into home, if you want to put it that way, promised land. So what's that in between time?
Yeah.
And how do we operate there, and what does that look like? And also, I'll just say it this way: in the wilderness, we're going to establish the framework for the homeland, because we've left one place. It's like there's the Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
It's like there's two circles, and the wilderness exists in that middle space. And so whatever was established as a paradigm in this circle, and whatever paradigm of this circle, the wilderness is going to be the thing that connects them together.
Yeah, there's a looking back and a looking forward that happens.
We're talking about
that.
this holding hands thing, the stacking on top, distilling down, and it's kind of already not yet, if you want to put it that way. I mean, it's all kind of contained in the text here. I mean, I think we're out of time today, just time-wise. So I think we need to kind of put maybe panache on the things. Unfortunately, we haven't even looked at the plagues yet. We haven't even looked at the strikes.
No.
We didn't even get out of Exodus chapter 4. There's way too much to say on them. But I think the maybe more important to our theme study than what's going on in the plagues, or we call them strikes, is that they're producing the opportunity for these people to go out. So that's why I kind of really didn't hit them in this last week's sermon very much. I did want to say the thing about spiritual warfare. You know, that was important.
Yeah.
Do you have something you want to throw in there?
No, I was just going to point out that if we were going to compare, you know, the strikes and the creation narrative, we did talk about that on the last episode of the cutting room floor.
And maybe we could quickly say 10 words of creation in the Genesis narrative, 10 words of decreation in the Exodus narrative.
Yeah.
So God is allowing creation to undo itself, as it were, to decreate. He's allowing chaos to reign,
Right.
as a result of his. But
Is one of the elements of what's being.
Yes, one of the elements. But what's interesting is that it's still his word that's allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
In other words, the regularity of how locusts operate and how hail operates and how darkness, my goodness, how darkness operates.
Yeah.
That upends it flips on its head, and so we have some kind of parallel thing going on, which then again, of course, we have creation, decreation, 10 words. What are we now anticipating? One more time. 10 more words.
Okay.
10 more words.
That's really cool.
The Decalogue, we would say,
Yeah.
of creation for a nation. Oh, that rhymed. I didn't even mean
That
it
was
to.
good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so all of this is on the table. The plagues are really important. The strikes are really important. We don't have time to discuss them today. We didn't even get to talk about the bridegroom of blood and the circumcision narrative out in the wilderness with Moses and Zipporah. So there's a lot still that we get to cover. And I'm really excited about our next
Do
cutting
we have
room
to
floor.
do this episode part 2?
Yeah, I think we'll have to
Okay.
do it that way. And then we'll have to leave some more time for people like Mr.
Yeah.
Jim who pop in to ask questions. Unfortunately, we're just out of time. We're butted up against Celebrate Recovery.
Which we're
coming in.
super grateful for,
Yes.
Jim coming in. And if you
He
want to
caught our camera going out on us.
Come back again.
Man,
Please
we
do.
enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. Hey, and also, this is just an open invitation. This
Yeah.
is not like just me and Devin time. Like,
Yeah.
anyone can come in here. And if you're brave enough, we'll put you on camera, man. So, or lady. So, not exclusive. Come in here.
count.
Either way. But I think what we're going to start looking towards, because, shoot, I have so many things. The snake wrangler thing and Moses being able to scoop up the water and turn it into blood, all this stuff that we barely got to touch on in the sermons, I still kind of want to talk about. But ultimately, here's where we're going. We're going into Exodus chapter 12. We're going into the Passover narrative, which we saw in the video the past couple weeks that we've watched,
Right.
that there's this strange pause in the midst of the narrative. That's what we're going to examine coming up in part 18, I believe, is the next sermon. And then after that, we're going to leave Egypt, go to the wilderness like you keep talking about. We'll discuss why that's important and how the theme of exile is still routing, because even though you might be on your way home, doesn't mean that there isn't still a journey to walk.
Yeah.
And so whatever God's about to do in Exodus 19 through 24 is going to be one of the most important moments of our Bible.
Right.
So this whole narrative here, this is why we're spending so much time doing this.
Yeah.
After we get out of Exodus, we're gonna hit Deuteronomy. I know. After we get out of Exodus, my goal is we're gonna hit Deuteronomy. We're gonna go to the kingdom of Israel. We're gonna say a few statements about that. We're gonna rely on the cutting room floor a lot, and then we're gonna go to the prophets. Spend a little while in the prophets because most people don't know nothing about the prophets.
We're going to have a good time.
They're just hard to read, man. They're hard to, and I get it. I get why people don't know the prophets or enjoy them because they're hard to read. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of harsh stuff in there. So, and it's poetic, and there's all kind of context that we're not aware of. So anyway, we're gonna stay there for a little while in the prophets. Okay. So I want to fly through the kingdom. I want to get to the prophets, and then we're gonna spend a lot of time in exile. Okay. And then we're gonna spend a lot of time in Jesus, in the church and new creation. So. This covenant thing that we're talking about, all of this, these are concepts that are super important for us to grasp onto and do our best to kind of hold on as we fly through the story here. I'm excited.
This is the best series ever.
I've had so much fun. Like, I can't even believe it. So anyway, thank you for joining, guys. Devin, thanks for being here. Jim, thank you for coming and joining in with us. We appreciate you. Again, open invitation if you guys would like to come and be a part of this. I think we generally film Wednesdays around 2:45 if you're available and can make that. We would also make other arrangements to go and do other kinds of filming if we had, kind of a groundswell of people who wanted to do another time frame. We're totally cool with that. This is not an exclusive thing. This is invitational. someone might say.
Wow.
The cutting room floor. We just, we're already talking about this stuff anyway, just writing sermons, and we want to get so many other people up here. So if you're brave, you can get on camera. If not, you can come and sit and hang out. We'll do the question thing back and forth. If you have questions, shoot them off to the office in an email, or write them in the comments, and we'll see if we can't answer some of those. Glad you guys joined with us again. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of The Cutting Room Floor.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Cutting Room Floor. If you have any questions or want to know more about what we discussed, send an email to Church on the Rock. Like and subscribe to receive notifications for any videos we post. May God bless your study of His Word.